Hi, John. How are you?
Doing great, Fran. It's good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to see you again, too. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you as a member of Altitude 2021 and for us to be spotlighting both you and the entire Ibotta program.
Yeah, this has been already quite the experience. I'm very flattered and very thankful to my account team at BetterCloud for pushing me along and highlighting my experience. But thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Well, before we go into a little bit more about your journey as an individual, as well as the Ibotta journey in SaaS ops, we should probably start with introductions. For those who are watching, my name is Fran Slattery, and I'm a director of customer success here at BetterCloud. And John, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jon Aviles. I'm the Senior Identity Access Management Engineer at Ibotta, and I've been here about 4 years.
Wonderful. Well, John, tell me a little bit more about that role.
Yeah, it's evolved from being an apps analyst and then going right into identity access, which is something BetterCloud helped highlight a lot. But the user lifecycle at Ibotta was something that I ended up gearing very towards after being very immersed into all of the cloud applications that we had here. It got to that point where I'm helping architect the way that user lifecycle goes through as we adopt more applications and it's been already quite the experience. But as soon as getting BetterCloud, knowing that there was a SaaS ops world out there that was a part of what I was exactly doing, it really just helped me highlight that even more with my company.
And this is a newer role for you, right?
It is. It's one of those where like you feel like you're still doing the same work, but it's a promotion, in a sense. So I think mostly it comes with more trust and accountability that can maybe make someone nervous at times. But for me, it's been a huge passion project to make these processes a lot better for multiple operations teams and the departments that are using these applications. So as much as it is new, it feels like the right place to be at the time.
Wonderful. Well, you already mentioned lots of applications, more people. I think this is a similar theme that many others in our industry are hearing. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more. How is IT and SaaS ops operating within Ibotta?
Yeah, with the mention of so many cloud applications, we also have that big mention of an all cloud environment. And I honestly didn't really know what that was unless it was just all AWS or Azure, everything hosted somewhere. And we have that stuff too, but it ended up being that no, we just happen to buy a lot of vendor-based applications that provide specific services or a broad array of services. And when I joined, the app side of the IT team, I realized kind of how out of hand a little bit it was just because of how fast we were growing, meaning making big partnerships and having huge onboardings a week. It just was really hard to keep up. So at that point, I really focused in on what we needed for that type of life cycle, help, were we submitting too many tickets? Were we submitting not enough from HR? Permissions and separations that were done on time and effectively. As soon as we vetted BetterCloud and incorporated we were able to put all of that in our minds into it and away with the SaaS ops, revolution we've made away with. And it just brought us into this better ecosystem now.
Wonderful. And it sounds like you were there while you were making that change from on-prem to all cloud, or were you coming in on the later stages of that?
Yeah, the much later stages. Actually, Ibotta started as a startup in Denver, Colorado. Only the equipment in the office is the stuff that we have on prem, but we are all literally cloud. AWS for our application and our product, and cloud vendor services are now, which everyone now knows is SaaS. Across the rest of the whole company. So that going from Zendesk to Salesforce to Box to DocuSign. We have all the big ones, but also many others that are starting to grow.
All of which are integrated in BetterCloud.
Yeah, yeah, especially the very big important ones. When they mentioned power user, I was kind of like, what? I'm just plugging in everything that we have, but it really does show that the SaaS world really is growing in each company and a huge need now to help with processes.
Well, as you were taking in, the apps that already existed in your environment, all of the apps that other teams might be bringing in live. Tell me a little bit more. What were the IT and SaaS ops challenges that you were trying to solve with the SaaS management platform?
Yeah, a lot of it was just taking away the manual processes that were bringing our teams down, from HR operations to IT, and then, the departments that have the new employees, being onboarded to them. And even for the employees leaving, making a smoother experience, to help free up either licenses, or just better account management, so that this way security can trust us, and then also from a contract perspective, we're not the ones over licensing or making sure that they're not supported there. So it solved a lot of issues that really was mostly time consuming stuff, and freed up a lot of time for front end and others.
It sounds like you also had the combination of, when you're designing processes, the what do we just mimic in a new platform versus what processes do we redesign completely? And if I remember correctly, in some of our previous conversations, you even spoke about how to proactively avoid the one-off tickets. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, it really took away a lot of one-offs for us, mostly because we just established that relationship with that department.
You spoke to new apps coming in versus the apps that already existed. So it sounds like you had a combination of opportunities to just mimic processes that you already had in this new automated platform, versus also kind of reconsidering and maybe redesigning or creating brand new processes. In prior conversations, I believe you also spoke to this proactive approach on trying to avoid one-off tickets and one-off use cases. Like, what could you automate that maybe not be a regular occurrence? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experiences with those different scenarios.
Yeah, a lot of that is cross-departmental relationships, and really partnering with those teams and those leaders to really understand, the applications that they're using, what they need, permission requirements to, level of access. It really came down to that we just needed to know what they needed and document that thoroughly, and then figure out ways, how can we make it easier? Is it through our identity platform that can create these users, or something like BetterCloud that eventually can, tie in another application into a workflow, or alert another team in a Slack channel, to let them know that they're starting. It really just started to expand and lead us to cover a lot more of presence with IT when it came to SaaS applications. So now when we have a presence on the procurement committee, which wasn't there when I started, but is now a way for us to have that eye to give that feedback on, like, hey, this product, is a little bit redundant. We have something else that does this. Let me show you some articles and things, and run and expand on it. Or, hey, this actually will serve a huge need. Let me get going on the process of figuring out how to automate your onboarding for users, so that this way, either day one or at least within, that week onboarding period, that they can have the access they need.
Wonderful. Well, tell me a little bit more specifically, how did BetterCloud help solve those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, taking time away is always a huge plus. So when we had all these manual processes written out, and a lot of it being, me as the solo administrator, just helping, this big group, and, creating accounts and all these applications only I had admin access to, it really got to the point where, like, I want to give this to my front end team to, one, not have the more ability to do, but also that it doesn't time consume them with things. They just have more accountability within the team to do more. So BetterCloud just let me put all of that stuff that I was doing manually, a lot of stuff, and put it in there in different workflows that catered to different departments. And eventually was able to hand this all completely to my front end team to be able to trigger these workflows and interact in these tickets with users as they're, finishing the rest of the experience. So that be hardware retrieval or just supporting them with the applications that they're getting. I get to really put that in their hands using BetterCloud.
Wonderful. It sounds like in many ways you're bridging that gap between security and IT.
Yeah, DLP is always going to be a huge topic, I think, when it comes to IT and security alike. And having tools that can provide that to you can normally lean to one team or the other, where BetterCloud actually brought, like, a huge relief to a security team that was slowly growing during my time here. I started without one and then grew to be alongside one. which is a whole other experience that I'm really glad I got to have. And really just being in this InfoSec partnership to one, identify, other applications that aren't in this ecosystem yet, but also to verify that like we have tools that can alert us about things, that can show us things about shared folder access and how many admins I have that might be excessive. It really just helps us provide info to them, and that's ultimately what security wants.
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit more too about any key takeaways or lessons that you've learned through the process of acquiring and implementing your SaaS management platform.
Yeah, lessons is that automation is always going to be a need. I really think that as we grow more in our technology and add more and more tools, it really makes sense that those tools need help with processes, just like we would. We want to communicate together the groups and the roles and the permissions to things, but and have that in documentation, but someone still has to manually do all that stuff. And when you times that by 100 something plus applications, it really becomes a process of like, who owns this? And I think my lesson was really to understand my position with the application, but always make sure that it was at a support base for the person that was onboarding it. And so when I onboarded BetterCloud and started plugging a lot of things in, it kind of helped me really formulate that process of like, okay, if I'm helping onboard an application, I need to make sure that these points are highlighted, that we need to be able to like make your new team member automatically and on demand. We don't want them to wait a week, before they can log into something, or free up licenses to platforms correctly that they own those contracts for. I have a lot of things in the IT budget, and many IT teams will always go through that struggle, but it really turns into that teams are owning their application budgets because they're the primary users, where I need to make sure that I support them and making sure that they have enough licenses that are accurate to the company on what they pay for, and it helps their teams down the road.
Wonderful. Well, one of the things you also alluded to earlier during the introduction is that you've had some career growth while at Ibotta. I'd love to hear a little bit more about any lessons learned and any advice you might have for others who are pursuing a similar journey.
Yeah, it has been quite the time in 4 years. I started, the role was called service desk analyst at the time, and it really all front desk apps, hardware, come to your desk, help you with your monitors. And I honestly loved that job. I came from Apple retail before that, and really loved to just be a communicator first and worry about the technology after. The technology will figure it out. It's about making sure you can do your job. And but moving up, I noticed a huge need for applications. We just had 100, I think 110 at the time, that were not managed by a single sign-on platform like OneLogin or Okta. We didn't have Active Directory. We don't have anything on-prem to help manage them. Our HR platform is not connected to anything, so there's manual processes here and there. So when I jumped into it, I just learned quickly how much the application ecosystem is growing. Not just at Ibotta, but just SaaS as a terminology, and other teams growing from it. So I just really learned that when people use these cloud applications, they're for ease of use, but they can't also be overwhelmed by all the backend stuff and how a directory works with it and how the things are created. They just need help with their team to like get going. And so I kind of just learned to focus on that the most, and everything just kind of plugs in. You get the information from the teams that you need, document it all, and it's something like BetterCloud let me just drag everything in my mind and put it into place. So a long-winded question to talk about what I learned, but it really did formulate that way, where BetterCloud was that like last piece of all the manual things I was doing in my head that I can put in there.
Wonderful. Well, as you talk about automating all those manual things, what have you been able to do with the time that you've gained back?
Well, focus a lot on, the more back-end things that people don't have to worry about, like introducing more and more applications from other teams. But mostly, my front-end team got a lot of time back. We were just plugging away, doing data entry, and as we start to grow, 20, employees a week and more, and needing to hire more front-end folk to help us out, even with BetterCloud, they were doing a lot of data entry, and as that started to grow, it really just started to free up hours, from our days. Now, where HR requests that are like, can I have a same day turnaround on a new hire that is a priority, and we can facilitate those types of things and not really bat an eye. Just one little trigger, and we have a workflow that provides them at least the core communication stuff that they need, and then move on into growing to the other applications.
Wonderful. Well, Jon, any other parting thoughts or last words of wisdom for our community?
All I would say is get to know the teams and the applications that they use. I think understanding what people would get upset about, if processy wise, that they do. I think it's really easy to understand how you can make things easier for them using the technology. We're very comfortable with the applications that we use, going through a random UI to figure out where the admin section is, and burst through it and help people figure out and dive into knowledge bases. But we can also provide that wisdom to the teams that use the applications and need that help. And a lot of times it makes it easier for both teams and build a good relationship out of it too.
Beautiful. And on that wonderful turn on focusing on people within the technology, I want to say thank you so much again for your time today and for sharing your and the Ibotta story with us.
Thank you, Fran. This is a great experience. I'm looking forward to talking again soon.